So for the past 3 years now, I've been living with a series of health issues categorized as long COVID, ME, CFS, chronic fatigue syndrome. And I wanted to share an update about how things are. I've done other videos. I did what happened when I first had my crash back in 2022. I did a video 1 year in. And now, 3 years in, I thought I would do an update for anyone out there that is struggling with similar or same condition. I guess the first question is, have I recovered? And the answer is no. If we're considering recovery to be pre-illness capabilities, no. I've not hit the gym for 3 years. Running, hiking, trekking, things like that are all still currently out of the question. I'll do a quick recap of how bad things were a few years ago. I had a long list of bizarre symptoms, dizziness, confusion, internal tremors. I would feel like my body was buzzing and vibrating pretty much all day, and it would get worse if I did kind of any activity. Breathlessness, real bad anxiety, crushing pain in my chest, fatigue's not even the right word, just completely couldn't feel my body. Tinnitus, PEM, post-excursional malaise, I think I'm saying that right. Stomach issues, toilet issues, chronic urination, feeling like I need the toilet all the time, burning on my skin, not even in the sun, even in the cold winter, my skin would feel like it was burning, mouth ulcers, migraines, real bad migraines, brain fog, blurred vision. I could barely read a sentence. And at my worst, just getting out of bed was an absolute devastating process, really. It felt awful. So 3 years later, am I as bad as I was in the beginning? Absolutely not. It's leagues apart, times apart. You know, a lot of the scary symptoms have pretty much gone. You know, the heart flutters, the feeling like my heart was dropping rapidly like an elevator. That's gone. Brain fog has softened. Migraines has very rare nowadays that I have migraines. But there are persistence. Fatigue is persistent. Post-excursional malaise is persistent. I still have stomach issues. Tinnitus is still there. And I've also weirdly recently developed sensitivity to smell, certain smells at least, mainly like aftershaves and perfumes. But I should also say that even though these symptoms are still there, they're a million times better than they were. I had tinnitus day and night. As soon as I woke up, all through the day, while I was falling asleep. Now it just comes and goes, you know. The fatigue is there every day, but I'm stronger. I can do more. I feel... There was a point where I felt like the world's strongest person was holding their hands on my torso and asking me to get up, and I couldn't. I don't have that sensation anymore. The buzzing internal vibrations where even just standing still, I'd feel like I was like, brrr, and I'd feel dizzy, I'd feel woozy, I'd feel just a little bit like I was rotting. that's all but gone pretty much. I mean, it's very rare. The buzzing's absolutely gone. The rotting feeling, it comes every now and then, but it's pretty much gone. The burning sensations on the skin, that's gone. And now I just feel like everything of the symptoms that I do have, it's more a mild version of it. So if I go out for a walk, for example, sometimes I'll start getting a bit of a sore throat. I'll get like a sniffly nose. My eyes will go red. A friend actually, harmlessly, who wasn't aware of the situation, said that I often look like I've got a cold, which, you know, was a bit of a kick in the balls. But it's true, yeah. It's like my body goes into this defense mode, and that still happens. There will be days where fatigue is just, it's a day at home, it's a day on the sofa, but I am able to kind of have a quality of life. I do work. I've actually been able to build and run successfully my own business throughout this time, which seems like a minor miracle, honestly, because yeah, I mean, I honestly don't know how I've been able to manage and keep some kind of life going, because honestly, I feel as much as I have been able to keep going, I could have quite have easily just been in bed for the past 3 years and not got out. I've had to push myself, which, you know, I guess is an argument to say maybe I'd be fully healed now if I had just completely stayed dormant. But on the flip side, I think there's an argument to say by keeping some kind of activity, it teaches the body that we don't need to completely shut down and we can make improvements. Obviously, when this first happened, I would have thought by now, or I expected by now, that I would have made a full recovery. Coming to accept that that isn't the case has been both, it's a bittersweet, really. I had a moment this year, and this is going to be a bit of a ramble because it's quite a difficult story to share. But there was a moment this year where I accepted this is how my life was, and that doesn't mean to say that I've accepted this is how my life is going to be forever. I'm still in my 30s, relatively young, but I accepted that in this moment, this is what I have to face, and this is what I have to deal with. And that kind of brought a real sense of peace in terms of I wasn't fighting against the illness anymore. Like, as soon as I got it, I just went into kind of hustle mindset, What do we do to overcome this? What do I do to make sure that this doesn't beat me? Let's do this, let's do that, let's do this supplement, let's do this healing remedy, let's do this meditation. And that was just tiring in itself. Whereas now, I just let it be. I let it be, and if I want to meditate, I'll meditate. I will get onto supplementation shortly, but if I want to try a healing process, I'll try it, and if not, I won't. If I watch a little bit too much YouTube, I've watched a little bit too much YouTube. If I've exerted myself a little bit too much, it happens. If I eat something that maybe the body isn't really wanting, right, like some chocolate, for example, or a cup of coffee, I'm not going to beat myself up anymore and just constantly be in this state of fighting against it. I'm just letting it be. And I feel, although it's been slow, this is actually helping me heal. This is what's helping me recover, is allowing. And I've got a gratitude journal, and I've noticed more and more, even though it's short moments, I'm writing in it, I feel totally fine right now. In fact, there's entries in there where I've written, I feel great. Now, because of the cycle of this illness, whatever it is, and I think that's one of the hardest parts of this journey is I really don't really know why I'm ill. I'm sure you've watched tons of videos, and in these videos, people have tests and things are fine, or they might have, for me, I had low B12 and vitamin D3, so I take that every day. I've seen improvements, but I'm still not a well person. And it's there's no real definitive, this is why you feel the way that you do. And that's difficult, that's hard, because you're like, I can't point when I feel better what the exact thing that worked was, because you try so many things and you don't actually fully know what you're treating, right? But yeah, in terms of mindset, which is obviously a term you're going to come across a lot in this healing journey, acceptance of just where I'm at and what's going on seem to be having an effect. And pacing. There's well, he's deceased now, but there was a guy called Bruce Campbell, and he had chronic fatigue syndrome, and he fully recovered. He was back to hiking mountains and doing what he wanted. He did a whole piece, or he's got a website, I'll link it in the description, about how pacing helped. And I know people look at pacing two ways, in the sense that, well, if I'm pacing, it means I'm not doing the level of activity that I want to do, therefore I'm not really treating the problem, I'm just not making it worse. And I used to think like that, and pacing was something that I struggled with, being a spoonie. I mean, having to tell people as a guy in his mid-30s, I'm a spoonie, I'm like, what are we doing, but that's just what it is, and that was part of the acceptance. I have to manage my energy, my activities, to feel a certain way. But what I think pacing does, or at least what I'm learning from my own experience, is in that time when you're pacing, you're letting your body heal. Like, for whatever reason, people develop these chronic issues, the chronic fatigue, the dysautonomia, POTS and stuff like that. The body has reacted very badly to something that's happened to it. In my case, it was a string of viruses, kind of, and the final straw was COVID back in 2021, and then gradually my body deteriorated. And as I say, by the end of 2022, I was fully in this chronic illness. But by constantly fighting it, by constantly pushing through it, by constantly saying, oh, I don't need to pace, I'll do this, I'll try that, you're just not giving your body space to go, hey, let me figure this out, please. A lot of people talk about brain retraining, and, of course, that's something that I've delved into myself. Do I think it's a load of rubbish? Absolutely not. I think mindset is such a key part of allowing your body to heal. When you see those people selling a course and they're like, oh, I thought some nice thoughts for 2 weeks and I was fully recovered, just bear in mind they're selling a course, right? And I don't think brain retraining is just the single cure, or whatever you want to call it, to sorting this out. I just think it's part of it. I think brain retraining allows you to take control of your thoughts and your reactions, and that's an important part of allowing your body to heal, because as you'll know, if you're new to this journey or if you're into it, it's very easy to spiral. When you get symptoms and you start to feel ill, I'm sure you've all seen the worst case scenarios of this, and your brain might go, oh, am I going to end up like that? Am I going to be the worst case scenario, or is my health going to go backwards? And that's where having some kind of perspective within your mind can help you and calm you down, because what I have learned is when I'm in a calm, relaxed environment, symptoms are subdued. So if I hang out with some people that I'm fully comfortable with, that I fully trust, then I'll have moments where I'm like, hey, yeah, I'm fine, I can hang out. If I say go to a new event where I don't know people and there's that kind of new people angst, even though I'm quite a confident person, I'll start getting symptoms. So there is something about the position that the mind is in that impacts the way that you feel. But then at the same time, I may feel completely calm, I may be doing all the right things, thinking all the right thoughts, and I'll feel like crap. So yeah, I think part of it is one element of recovery is brain retraining. I think one of it is more physiological, pacing. Make sure that you're giving your body what it needs, and that doesn't mean having the perfect diet, because perfection can make you ill. It's about just, more often than not, giving your body the rest that it needs, giving your body the fuel that it needs. And then it allows it to find kind of equilibrium, a balance, which can make you feel better. And if you also had to ask me what has been the biggest contributor to getting well, time, and I know no one wants to hear that, because we want to feel like ourselves. I mean, I never want to live the life I lived before I got ill again. I just want a peaceful, quiet, less hectic, less adrenaline fueled, less dopamine searching life. And it's taken me time to get there, because I'm having to unravel and redirect a lot of habits that I've got, a lot of behavioral traits that I have, and that takes time. The body regenerating, recuperating, it takes time. And again, I go back to acceptance. That's been something that's really helped me, just accepting that this is going to take time, accepting that, it's a process, and the process, as much as I want to speed it up, as much as I want to control it, I can't. This is in some ways out of my control. And when I say I'm confident I can still make a full recovery, part of that is hope. I have no clue what life has in store for me. But part of it is rational thinking as well, because I've seen the improvements. So when I was at my worst and I thought, oh, well, if I can just get to the point I'm at now, and here I am, then there's no reason for me to stop thinking, well, if I'm at the point I am now, I can get better. And, I talk about getting back to how I was. I wasn't well for a long time. I see things in myself and from before I had this super in-your-face illness that wasn't healthy, that wasn't well, that was dysregulated, that had a nervous system that was crying out for peace and harmony, and I just, for several reasons weren't able to give it that. And then this illness now is just my body screaming louder. It was screaming before, but it's screaming louder. So it's now about going on a new path and a new journey of well-being and health. And yeah, it's a difficult process. This thing that you're going through, that I'm going through, is the hardest thing hopefully you'll ever have to do. I can't imagine what could be more difficult than this. Supplements that I take, so I've tried loads, but right now what seems to be kind of working, where I've been actually able to see an improvement since I've been taking them, vitamin D and B12, because I'm on the lower end and deficient in some, getting that back has seemed to help. NAC I take, CoQ10 for energy, that's to help stimulate the mitochondria. I've been taking I take about 1,000 milligrams of CoQ10 a day, and since I've been doing that, I've seen more balance and more energy, which doesn't necessarily equate to me being able to do more. Say I can't start running, I can't walk further, but the difference I've noticed is when I am doing what I can do within my capacity, I feel relatively fine. Whereas before I had that capacity, but I'd still have symptoms. I'd still have, it'd feel like I could do it, but it was a mission. So those supplements aren't necessarily allowing me to do more. They're allowing me to feel good within my capacity. Now, I can have some days where I can do about 15 to 20,000 steps. Those are rare, but I can do them. Really, right now, to stay within kind of a very mild, moderate symptom level, it's between 7 to 10,000 steps per day. Remember, at my worst, I mean, getting out of bed was a mission. Walking down the stairs of the apartment block felt impossible, and getting to the end of the street was just not a thing that was going to happen. So here I am now saying I can walk comfortably, probably 7,000 steps, 10,000 steps on a really good day. And then on those days where I'm feeling really, really, really good, you can get to 15 and 20,000. I'll be out all the time with my camera. And that's a great thing to say. So if you are at your worst, and, you know, I really don't want to give advice, because this journey is so complex and it's so unique. What works for some people doesn't work for others, and all of that. But just focus on getting to the next step. Don't get too hung up on I've got to fully recover, because I just think it can make you ill, or it can make it harder. It can, from the mental side of things, you know. I should touch on the mental health side of things. There's been a couple of times this year, even though this year hasn't been my worst physically, it was the most challenging of years, because I was still sick. I wasn't getting better, and I had a couple of flare-ups, setbacks, which really did set me back, and I felt so ill. And the mental impact of that is, you know, there was a point where I was like, I don't know how I can do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. And there were a few dark nights, and a lot of dark thoughts. And thankfully, you know, I have people in my life that can get me through those moments, and just my sheer desire to keep enjoying and experiencing this life in whatever capacity I can, until one day it is eventually time for me to, you know, say goodbye. So the mental health side of things is difficult, you know. I've always been quite a happy, uplifting person, and thankfully I've been able to keep on with that. But, you know, there's levels of depression that have come into my life which I didn't have before. Some days I feel really down, and accepting kind of that's how it is has taken a weight off my shoulders. You know, breath work, meditation, doing things that I love, even if I can't do them. You know, I do photography, and, you know, having my camera with me every day and just taking a picture and say I've done something I love today, that keeps me going. Talking, having a recovery buddy. One thing that's really helped me, you know, throughout this time, I've met some people, some friends who are going through the exact same journey, and we touch base. But I've got one friend in particular, and we speak most days. And, you know, we don't necessarily just talk about the recovery and what's working and how we're feeling, although that's a large part of it. You know, we'll just talk about life in general, and just having someone who's kind of in the same situation as you, the same trenches as you, and if you get on with them anyway, and you're a like-minded person, share the same sense of humor, it really does help, because, you know, you don't feel as isolated, you don't feel alone, and you kind of want to do well for the other person, and you feed off them. When you see them doing well, it makes you feel better, you know. It makes you feel you care about them. You want to see them succeed and experience life in spite of the condition that they're going through. Because you know what that feels like when you have your moments of being able to do something that you weren't able to do, or being able to feel a certain way in terms of your health. So having a recovery buddy has been wonderful, and I'm truly grateful for that, and that person, and the other friends that I've developed in this situation. This journey is up and down, and it's been life-changing, completely life-changing. It's softened me, it's humbled me. And as daft as this sounds, I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that I'm softer, that I'm more humble, that I'm doing work within myself to understand myself, to understand how I got here, to understand, you know, how to manage it. I'm not superhuman, none of us are, and sure, like I say, 3 years in, I wish I was fully recovered. But I surround myself with stories of people who've had it far longer than me, people who've had it far worse than me, and I see them recover, and I see them talking about recovery. So when you go on, and I would avoid this as best you can, and I know it's not easy, but the forums, the Reddits and stuff, and there are people in this life, regardless of their condition, that will see the worst in everything. And I feel for those people. I don't understand why they're like that, but they are. And, you know, you will read their comments and they will say the worst thing possible. And because we're so vulnerable right now, we'll take that and we'll be like, oh no, and it'll deflate us. Stay away from those people. God bless them. I hope they find peace, but they're not relevant to your recovery. So when you do need that kind of reassurance, listen to recovery stories. Listen to the same ones again and again. It doesn't really matter. People do recover, people do heal. And, you know, even if full recovery isn't an option, people do return to a quality of life where they can feel fulfilled. And if I can at least get to that point, which I feel closer to, you know, week by week, month by month, year by year, then I'll be grateful for that. And, you know, I'll do my best to pass it on, what I learned from this journey. Probably I'm not going to be doing these videos all the time. As you can see, I do them once every year. But I'll probably be more articulate in how to manage this, because I'm still very much processing it all and trying to understand what's been happening and what has happened and what's going to happen in the future. So yeah, hold on, keep the faith, keep going, find success in life where you can. Even if it's not the success you thought you were going to have, success is still possible. As I say, throughout of all of this, I've somehow managed to build a business, and I'm very fortunate that my business is doing well. And because of the business model that I have, I don't necessarily have to be working all the time to earn money. And that's giving myself the space to focus on my recovery and keep going. But yeah, I love you all. I want all of you to feel better. And if you are in the trenches and it's new to you, it can get better. It does get better. I know that from first-hand experience. I know that from the friends that I've met on this journey and the stories that I've heard about, read about. And just find your own path, and I think I'll end it there. Thanks for listening.